The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Welcome to the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Here's your host, Jason A. Meiske.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 123 of the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. This week, I am really honored to get to go back to episode 2, my very first ever author interview, Stan C. Smith. He is back again today. We're having a sit down through Zoom and getting to catch up a little bit. And I am so happy about it. I'm so thrilled to get to bring this conversation to you because as anybody who's been a fan of the show and been listening for a while, and maybe you've gone back and checked out that episode, Stan and I are in the same writing group here locally, so I get to have insights into his books all the time. And so we're friends. I've really been dependent on him and his incredibly sound advice for my own stories over the years. And suffice to say, I'm very lucky to know him. And it is my great thrill today to get to bring him back on the show. I've been wanting to have them on here for a while and finally got around to getting to ask him on here. And you're in for a treat because we talk about a few of his series that has just totally changed his writing career in the last 2 years since he was last on. And you get to hear all about it. And that's coming up here in just a moment. Hey, make sure that you are following the show on our social media platforms at Facebook and Twitter. That's just the Sample Chapter Podcast. You can follow us there on both of those. I haven't been sharing that much on any of my social media platforms just due to my work schedule. But I still try to post as much as I can, and I should be able to get better about that again here real shortly. So make sure you're following us there. Don't forget to hit us up on the YouTube channel as well. That's been a really great platform. Lots of people starting to follow. We've been on there this summer. Will be our 1 year that we've been on there, and this is episode 123. But we have over 1,500 views just on YouTube. So that's fast becoming one of our big platforms, and I think it's because people really enjoy getting to go in and see the book. You know, the book covers right there as the episode is playing. And of course you got the links for the author, so you can go pick up a copy of it when you're done. And that's been a really fun place. And of course today will be just the same. You're going to see this incredible book cover on Stan's latest book. So make sure you're following us over there as well. But otherwise, the show is available on all podcast platforms, wherever you like to digest this information and get it into your listening ears while you're working out or going for a walk, or like Stan likes to do, go for a nature walk. But I don't know. I don't know if you're going to walk in the woods. I don't think you really want something playing in your ears. At least not in Stan's world. You definitely don't want to do that. But hey, just in case you are not a social media person, but you would like to reach out to the show, you can do so at samplechapterpodcast@gmail.com. Drop me a line. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, if you have a recommendation, and I will get back to you as quick as possible, and we'll just keep in touch. How's that? So no news this week per se. It's been a very, very busy couple of weeks. I've had a lot of maintenance going on with my house, some renovations, and changing out floors, and my work schedule has been pretty intense, actually, the last 3 weeks. So not a whole lot more to share. Although I did get a chance to open up my Scrivener for, it's the first time in almost 2 weeks that I've done any writing. And, I just being real here, and I'm just sharing with you the brutal honesty of it, that I've just been that kind of busy. And I probably, well, in fact, I know I've had some mornings where I could have, but I've been so tired that it's like all I can do to just sit there mindlessly and maybe play a little, like a little Animal Crossing or something on my phone. Yes, I'm a grandpa, almost 50 years old, and I'm playing Animal Crossing or something in the mornings while I'm waiting on the coffee to brew. But the point I was trying to get to, though, was that I did yesterday and again today, I got to open up my laptop, and rather than going back into my work in progress novel idea that's due out as soon as I can get it ready, I actually opened up my Bandit Chronicles book 2 and wrote in there, and oh man, I mean, I did, I think it was 160 words yesterday, and today I did about all total, I did 2 little sprints, and I ended up with about 360 words today. And that's just 2 quick 15-minute sprints. So, yeah, not a whole lot, but it's been stuff working in the back of my mind, information I needed to get down, and oh my gosh, it felt so good to write. Just to write something new. And that's one of the things I love about Scrivener, is that I've got multiple projects in there, so it's no big deal for me to hop in and start editing on novel idea, and then all of a sudden something clicks. Oh, I know how I'm going to fix that thing on the other page, or I know what I need to say in this other story. And I just save my work, I go into the other document and pull up Bandit Chronicles, and now I can write away and finish that chapter. And that's exactly what I've been doing here yesterday and today, and I'm going to try and get that continuity back, start working every day. But anyway, but speaking of Scrivener, we'll just start with them as a valued sponsor of the show. I'm going to go ahead and play a spot for them, so make sure you're listening for how you can save yourself 20% on your next purchase. Jason here. Hey, I wanted to take a moment and tell you about my favorite writing tool, Scrivener. Now, I know you've heard about Scrivener because their writing software has been embraced by hundreds of thousands of other writers like you and I, from the novice to best-selling novelists. The reason we all use it is because of Scrivener's core concept to bring all the writing tools you use together in a single application. And with tools like automatic backup, character maps, project goals, and let's not forget that amazing corkboard, you can see why I use Scrivener every day. As a bonus for Sample Chapter Podcast listeners, use code CHAPTER for 20% off your desktop version. Scrivener writing software, built by writers for writers. Scrivener writing software, I love that stuff, and it has been so valuable to me. I love getting to open that up and go right back to where I left off. I also want to give a big shout out to my longtime sponsor, U-Tor-All, out of right here in Warrensburg, Missouri. They're the premier self-storage facility with everything you could ask for in a storage facility. 2 locations, fully fenced, gated access. You're going to have your own private gate code, well lit all night long, climate control and non-climate control. And they are a green facility, meaning they run things off of solar power and very bright LED lighting. Check them out online at U-Tor-All.net. That's spelled the letter U, STORALL.net. Thank you also to my very first podcast network that this show joined, Pop Goes the Culture Network. Click the link in the show notes for more about them and all the different shows that they have. It's all pop culture and movie related. Everything about your geek culture that you have an interest in, you will find it there. And don't forget to also follow up with Pop Goes the Culture Podcast, their flagship show. They do live recordings on Thursday night, and you can participate on their cast channel. So click the link in the show notes so you can get over there and find out how you can participate in one of their live events. And tell them Jason said hi. And last but not least, I want to say thank you to Project Entertainment Network, my latest podcast network that we've become part of, with more than, I think it's 35 different shows now on the network. You have a whole slew of shows to check out, more than I can name off right now, although that might be kind of fun to try and do one of these days. But check out this ad for one of them, and make sure you click the link in the show notes for more.
This is Jim Adams from Monster Attack. Hey, if you remember that monster movie from your childhood that got it all started for you, the one that really got you interested in monster movies, horror movies, sci-fis, and cult films, then you're going to want to listen every week to Monster Attack. We look at some of our favorite monster movies from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. With new episodes uploaded every Monday, it's Monster Attack, exclusively on the Project Entertainment Network.
And that's another one of those amazing shows over at Project Entertainment Network. Make sure you click over there and check out everything they have to offer. Well, like I said, this week we are visiting with the incredible science fiction author and a guy I'm fortunate enough to call friend, Stan C. Smith. He is now on his third series of books with a couple of standalones in the midst. His first series, the Diffusion series, is what got him going and got him established in the writing world. His Bridgers series after that set him apart from most authors with consecutive #1 bestsellers. And now his latest, the Obsolete Theorem, which is part of his brand new series, the Across Horizons, is definitely due to put him in another atmosphere. And I mean, you know, I joke with them about being jealous, and it's funny how amongst authors, yeah, we do get jealous of each other, and Stan is one of those guys that I am both extremely proud of, and yeah, sure, I'm definitely jealous of, but I know how hard he works. I know the effort he puts into it, and it's not just Stan, it's his wife, Trish, who I think is probably listening to this too, so hello, Trish. I hope you're doing well and keeping Stan well behaved. So, looking forward to catching up with both of you at a live event sometime. But Stan and I have a really great talk today that you're going to really enjoy. He is a lifelong Edgar Rice Burroughs fan. We're going to talk about that. We talk about how what kind of things he sees on a nature walk, and how he is, you know, just doing his best to put out the best stories that he can. So, anyway. Enough of me talking about it. Let's get on over to our conversation with Stan C. Smith. Welcome back to the Sample Chapter Podcast, everyone. Oh my goodness, I'm so happy today. I get to go all the way back visiting with my friend from I guess technically it'd be episode 2. But it was my very first author interview with Stan C. Smith, and today he is back. Author of the sci-fi thriller adventure stories. Oh my gosh, so many things to talk about. I cannot wait to dive in. So, Stan, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to talking to you.
I'm so happy to be able to have you back on here. I can't believe it's been so long, which is funny because I think we talked about in the first episode that we're in the same writing group, so we get to see each other, but not so much here in the last couple of months.
No, the last couple of months have been pretty crazy, and our face-to-face meetings they're on hold, and we've been doing some by using Zoom. But I'm not sure how much longer we'll have to do that, but it may still be another month or two.
Could be a little while longer. I'm just amazed at how different my schedule has changed, and my Tuesdays are now packed full of everything. And so I'm looking forward to getting back in there and visiting with you and all of our writer friends again soon. But it's fun for us to be able to catch up like this, but then at the same time, for my listeners who haven't heard from you since back then, something that stands out to me was, so this is almost 2.5 years ago, episode 2, and I remember when you and I were talking during the interview, and you wanted to read from this little series that you were working on called Bridgers, and we got to talk about it, and it was exciting to hear what this might be. Lo and behold, that completely changed your career, didn't it?
That series took off, and I'm real pleased with the way it's been going. That series is complete now. It's got six primary books and one prequel that's been doing real well. So yeah, it's pretty exciting for me.
Yeah, I was so thrilled about that when I hit episode 100, I wanted to touch on that, how how the show has grown, and here's some of my past favorite authors, how they've grown as well, and just how big you have grown as an author since then, with multiple bestsellers and just completely changing everything. And oh my gosh, I mean, it's not going to be too long before I think Hollywood might be knocking on your door, or at least Netflix.
Well, that's something all authors hope for, I suppose. But in the meantime, I'm just going to keep putting out the best books I can, and I always look forward to starting a new series because I have so many ideas. The problem is that there's no shortage of ideas. There is a shortage of time. But I'm not a particularly fast writer, but I'm doing the best I can.
Well, you've been doing really well, though, still. I mean, I know you say you're not a fast writer, but you're putting out, so 2.5 years, you put out 6 books with the Bridgers series. I think you did a complete revision of Diffusion. You had Parthenium's Year, and there was another 1 or 2 short stories in that time as well.
Yeah, there's in the Diffusion series, there's a short story called Blue Arrow. Parthenium's Year, of course, is a standalone. That's the only book I have published right now that's a standalone story. And I'm on my 3rd series now, which is called Across Horizons.
Yeah, and you've already put 1 out with the second one. Is the second one come out yet?
The second one is not out yet. It's I'm working on it furiously right now, and I'm determined to put that out before the end of July.
Oh my gosh. Well, color me jealous, because at the time, again, going back to when we first talked on the show, you had just finished, I think, Diffusion and was working on Bridgers.
Yeah.
So in that time, you've done 6 books with Bridgers, Parthenium's Year, started this new series with Obsolete Theorem, and about to finish your next one. So what is that, 8, 9 books? And I had 1 book in that time.
Well, you're awful busy doing other things. So I retired, not too long before the last time you and I talked on this podcast, and having been retired, that can make a pretty big difference on how much time you can spend per day on writing. So I feel fortunate to be able to do it full time now.
One of the things I love about your stories is that, me knowing you personally, I know how much you love the outdoors and going out into the woods, going for walks, and being a follower of your e-newsletter, the amazing animals that you put out. But then you write these incredibly wild science fiction stories. Where does this come from?
Well, all of my stories take place in wilderness settings. They often involve survival in the wilderness and strange animals, and some friendly, some animals not so friendly. That part of it is just a characteristic I've had all my life. I've always loved to be outdoors, and I've always been fascinated by creatures. And my background is in biology and ecology in college, and I taught science, for a number of years. And but I've also always loved science fiction. I kind of grew up learning to read books by reading Edgar Rice Burroughs books, the John Carter of Mars and Tarzan and all that, and was fascinated by all the creatures and the strange settings. And so that's where it comes from, really, is the combination of what I've always loved to read, as well as my fascination with wildlife and my background in science.
Yeah. So I'm just imagining then what it must be like to go on a nature walk with you. And for instance, you come across a pill bug, and in your mind, you're thinking, oh, this should be as big as a buffalo, and come out. And of course, I'm referencing the Bridgers series with that. Is that kind of an idea of where your mind goes?
That is, and that might seem a little strange to people, but I can't help but think of, well, what if this thing was much larger, or what if we were in an alternate version of Earth, and for example, mammals never evolved, and instead when the dinosaurs went extinct, it only left a variety of birds, and the birds themselves became dominant, and some of them even involved some intelligence. What would it be like then? Well, that's the concept behind Bridger's one. And then each of the Bridger's books, of course, is a different. It's a very different concept that's like that. What if the world was dominated by amphibians, for example, like in Bridger's 6. And so whenever I'm out on a hike or taking pictures of things out there, I can't help it. That's what crosses my mind is, what would it be like if this was different, or if these had existed for far before people did, or something like that,
So while we're talking about Bridgers, let's remind the listeners what the Bridgers series is about. What's like the elevator pitch for this?
Well, basically, imagine that we have the technology to jump almost instantaneously to an alternate universe. Not time travel. It's totally different. The Across the Horizon series deals with time travel, at least in the way I like to deal with it. But jumping to an alternate version of Earth. So you're not traveling through space or anything like that. You're just jumping to the exact same spot on Earth, except that it's an alternate Earth. And the interesting thing is, the device that allows you to jump or bridge, that's where the word bridgers comes from, the device that allows you to bridge between these universes, you can tell it at what point in the past did that alternate version of Earth diverge from our own. If it diverged only a year ago, then the universe you're jumping to, the version of Earth you're jumping to, would not be all that different. We might have different people elected to office. We might have some people might have died and others lived and things like that, but it probably wouldn't look all that different. But imagine if you jumped to a version of Earth that diverged 1,000 years ago, or in the case of Bridger's 1, 80 million years ago, or in the case of Bridger's 6, closer to 500 million years ago. Then you could imagine the version of Earth that you're jumping to would be drastically different than where we are now. And the life that exists on that version would be completely different, possibly dangerous, possibly not. And that just boggles my mind. And I love the concept. And so I really enjoyed writing that series.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. I have to say, you almost ruined my vacation that summer, because I finally got a chance to start reading it when I was in southern Missouri in Branson, and we were camping, and I thought, I'm gonna start reading Stan's book. And it was all I could do to not just read it all the time when I'm like waiting at the park that we went to and other places. And my wife was like, "Will you put the book away?" I was like, "I can't. It's like, it's so good."
Well, that's the intent. Well, my intent is to ruin your vacation. So yeah.
Well, it certainly enhanced it. There was never a dull moment. And looking back now, it's been 2 years since I read that. It's hard to decipher now. Remember which part was my vacation and which part was in the book.
Well, hopefully the animal attacks were in the book.
Oh, and for me, the alternative fun to that too was I came back from vacation and I was just finishing the book, and you were already, I think, finishing book 3 or in the midst of book 4. So getting to have little snippets of that whenever we would meet, and I'm almost to the point of like wanting to close my ears, going, no. Oh, yes, no, I do want to hear this. Yes. So some of the benefits of being in the same writing group.
Yeah, a lot of spoilers come out in a writing group. But so, it is kind of difficult when you're in a writing group and we share our excerpts. We usually only read 5 double-spaced pages at a time. And usually I listen to it and it's a lot of fun, but then I want to know more. I want to keep reading, and then we have to switch to another one. So it's nice when you have a chance to see it all come together in one continuous book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's, well, I keep coming back to that it's been a lot of fun, but just having this wonderful group that we've got, and so many of them that have successfully published in the last couple of years, and getting to see it from concept to fruition.
Absolutely.
And then getting to read that later on and like, oh my gosh, I remember having a conversation trying to decide where this was going to go, and it's just so wonderful.
Yes, it is.
So I think I know the answer to this, but do you have a favorite character that you've written so far?
Oh my goodness. Well, I would have to say, up until the last few months, I would say it might have been Infinity, who's a female character in the Bridgers series. That she's one tough cookie. She grew up in a really tough childhood. Immediately got into kind of semi-professional fighting, mixed martial arts. Was a struggling fighter. Couldn't seem to make ends meet, and then she had a job offer to work for this Safe Trek bridging company, and her job was to protect tourists and scientists who bridge to an alternate version of Earth. The reason why they needed someone who had hand-to-hand fighting skills is because when you bridge, everything that's non-living is stripped away from you, and so you end up, you can't take any weapons, you can't take any recording equipment, cameras. Your clothing is stripped away, your hair is stripped away, and you have to survive for 36 hours with basically nothing, except for your bare hands and your ingenuity. And so that's what Bridgers is all about. The Bridgers are those that are hired to protect those people. And Infinity is one of the protagonists of the whole series, and she has been probably my favorite character up until I've started this Across Horizons series, in which I have another female character who is also, a fierce fighter and hunter, and her name is Skyra, but I'll have to tell you a little bit more about that when I read the first part of the first chapter. She's not even human.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I remember. It's amazing with everything that's been taking place. It just seems so long ago that I remember you bringing in and reading from that, and then all of a sudden the first book has been out for a while and it hit number one. You're about to come out with book 2, and I'm thinking, my gosh, I didn't get the usual input on this that I usually, the behind the scenes that I usually have by now. So it's you're like most of my authors who are guests on here. I usually have more insight, but now it's like, oh gosh, I can't wait to hear more about this and what's happening.
Yeah. Well, the Cross Horizons series I'm very excited about. There's only, like you said, there's only one of the books out so far, and the other one hopefully will be out by the end of next month. But it's, just with only one book out, what's surprising is that it's, that book is on a consistent day-by-day basis the biggest seller I have so far. So I would imagine that by the time the rest of the entire series is out, it's gonna be another game changer for me.
I'd say so. Now, you're doing something a little bit different with this series than what you did with Bridgers. Bridgers, you came out with I think it was the first 3 in pretty quick succession, which I think that was by design, correct?
Yes, the first 2 were very close together. I was kind of determined to do a rapid release strategy, and perhaps still that's the way to go. But I've kind of gotten away from that, and I just get them out as quickly as I can. And as soon as I finish one and get it completely edited and perfected, I release it. And so I'm trying to get a book out about once per 3 months. It might be closer to 3.5 or 4, but I'm shooting for once per 3 months. And rather than writing 3 books and then releasing them a week or 2 apart.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, that's still. I mean, if you keep up that schedule, that's still 4 books a year, and that's a really good pace.
Yeah. Well, it's slower than some and faster than others, so I'm happy with it. I'm always striving to increase the pace, but everyone's mind works differently, and I simply cannot get the words down much faster than I do. And I suppose at some point I might try narration, into speech to text software, but I'm not sure my mind would do that well. So I haven't really gotten around to trying that. But 1 book per 3 to 4 months is what I'm doing now.
Well. So while we're on it, then tell us about the new series Across Horizons. What's going on in this?
Well, whereas Bridgers was centered around technology involving the ability to jump or bridge from our universe to an alternate parallel universe, but it's still, you're still in the same spot, and you're just on a different version of Earth in that spot. Obsolete Theorem is the first book in the Across Horizons series, and this series is about time travel. Now, there's a lot of stuff out there on time travel, and there's movies and books galore, but of course I have to make it my own, and so it's my version of time travel. The title Obsolete Theorem actually refers to an idea that one of the two protagonists, his name is Lincoln, he's kind of a brilliant scientist who came up with a time machine, so to speak, and he figured out that it's anytime you jump back in time, you create an alternate universe, because you basically have to, if you think about it, because if you jump back in time and then try to jump back to where you are, it's not ever possible to do that, because let's say you jump back 1 year, well, starting at that point in time a year ago, there are millions and millions of tiny little random things that happen every second, every minute, every hour, every day, that make it so that when you go back forward, it's going to be completely different than where you were before. Even if you went forward again, back and forth a million times, every time you go back forward a year, it's going to be different because of the random events that take place. Especially if you make a change in the past, then the difference is going to be even more profound. So the idea is that he has a way of traveling back in time, but there is no way to get back to where you were before. It's basically a one-way trip, even though you can jump back to the future. He and his team are forced to go back in time because the remains of a Neanderthal woman are found, 47,000-year-old remains, and lying among those remains is a drone, which is a robotic device with artificial intelligence that Lincoln has devised, and he uses those when he sends his drones back in time to collect data. And so everyone's concerned about this. Why is there a drone with why would there even be a drone in this universe that was back 47,000 years in the past? It shouldn't be possible. And then they conclude that his theorem is obsolete, which means, that it is possible to send something back in time and then that thing would still exist in our universe 47,000 years later. Whereas before that, everyone thought it was not possible. So he goes back in time and he actually saves the life of this Neanderthal woman. Her name is Skyra. And that's when the adventure begins.
Oh my goodness. So you're saying there's hope for Doc Brown and Marty yet?
There may be.
Oh my goodness. This is awesome. And I remember the reveal of that cover there in Writing Club. It's amazing, Stan. Just really amazing.
Well, the cover is it's by Jake Caleb Clark. He's my cover designer. He's an awesome designer. It's really helping to sell this book. It's an eye-catching cover that reminds me of the old Edgar Rice Burroughs books I used to love to read.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
an action scene with an animal, attacking or something like that, like the old covers from those old books. And so it really is eye-catching, and I'm happy that he's doing these covers for me.
Oh my God! Yeah, outstanding cover, and I can totally see why everybody is. They tell us not to judge a book by its cover, but at the same time, we got to catch their attention, and you are certainly doing that with these covers.
Well, I just got, yesterday, in fact, I just got the finished cover for the third book in the series, and it's pretty awesome. The second one is too. The third one is very eye-catching also.
Oh,
I'm
my
real
goodness.
happy with it.
Well, hopefully we'll be back in group here soon, and I'll get to have the behind the scenes peek at it.
Yep, for sure.
Well, tell everybody where we can find and follow you, Stan.
Well, StanCSmith.com. Links to all the books, information about all the books and series, other goodies there. You can sign up for my email list. I have a fairly popular email newsletter that goes out every 2 weeks, like clockwork, and people really like it. Even people that don't read my books like the email list, because every 2 weeks I feature what we call an awesome animal, and it's a fun look at one particular, awesome animal, of course. And there's some other goodies, like lately I've been doing, just because all the news is bad, I'll start my newsletters with happy animal facts, and those seem to be popular. So you can join on my website, StanCSmith.com. You can also look on Amazon. All my books are on Amazon in Kindle Unlimited or for purchase at Stan C. Smith on Amazon.
And I can definitely testify for it. I believe even 2.5 years ago when we last talked on the show, I said then, yours is my favorite newsletter, and it hasn't changed. I still, every time it comes in, I stop what I'm doing and I got to go through it. The only time that changes is if I see it on Facebook before I get the email. Then I'll grab it on Facebook real quick and look at it. Yeah. But yeah, fantastic newsletter.
Well, I do post the awesome animal feature on my blog, and then I'll throw something on Facebook for anyone that wants to check that out. All the other parts of the newsletter are just kind of exclusive to the people that are on my email list. But yeah, for the awesome animal feature, you can usually find those on Facebook. And you can get to my Facebook page right off my website, also StanCSmith.com.
Outstanding. All right. Oh my gosh, this has been a lot of fun for me, and I just love being able to finally. It feels like home, getting to catch up with you. As part of my writing group and part of that family that I've been a part of for several years, and I just love this so much, getting to catch up a little bit, and I really miss you and your wife and the whole group.
Yeah, we miss meeting in person, and hope to get back to it soon. Hope you can join one of the Zoom sessions and soon too. I know you're very busy on Tuesdays, but maybe that'll happen.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to it. I keep thinking that I'm on the verge of being not as busy as I have been, but we'll see. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've been thinking that for many years, and everything.
All right, Stan, thank you so much for being a guest on the show once again, and just best of luck to you, man. You've been fantastic, and I just love sitting back and watching all your success and giving me something to aspire to. And listeners, believe me, don't take my word for it. Let me just put it that way. Don't take my word for it. Go check it out, because he's got so much to offer, and you're going to love these stories. So,
well, I appreciate that, Jason. I'm thrilled that you asked me to talk to you again.
Well, the thrill is all mine, buddy. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, that means it's time for me to step aside and hand the floor over to my wonderful guest and good friend, Stan C. Smith, with his latest book, Obsolete Theorem.
All right. I'm going to read just the first section of the very first chapter of the first book of the Across Horizons series, called Obsolete Theorem. Just a quick note. There are two protagonists in this series. Skyra, who I mentioned is the female, and from 47,000 years ago. And there's Lincoln from current day or slightly in the future. I alternate chapters with the point of view. The very first chapter happens to be Skyra's point of view before Lincoln has a chance to meet her. So here it is. Chapter 1, Skyra. 47,659 years ago, Zaragoza province of Spain. Skyra Una Loto wasn't fond of hedgehog meat. A shame, since this meal would probably be her last. She stepped on the creature's head, thrust her stone blade into its chest, and sawed through skin and bone to its hind feet. A cooking fire here would reveal her presence, so she pulled out the heart and other chest organs and shoved them into her mouth. She needed food in her belly and strength in her arms and legs. Before nightfall, she intended to kill some of the bollops who had taken her birthmate, and if Vina was still alive, Skyra would take her back. Skyra rose to her full height, scanning the trees and hillside between her and the bollops' camp. Satisfied there was no danger, she wiped the blood from her chin and dropped back into a crouch. She pulled out the hedgehog's stomach and intestines and arranged them on a rock. She would eat them only if the rest of the body didn't quell her hunger. Quietly singing to herself, she gripped the soft, spineless belly skin and began working it from the flesh, rolling the skin over itself to cover the painful spines. Her birth mother had taught her how to skin a hedgehog, which now seemed so long ago. Disregarding the risk of being heard, Skyra pounded the skinned body with a rock, pulverizing the bones and flesh into a paste. She scooped the paste up with her fingers and consumed it quickly. By the time the mashed body was gone, she felt full enough to leave behind the intestines. She took several long breaths, trying to soothe her fears. After 4 days of searching, she had found the bollops' camp. It was time to kill. Skyra scrubbed her hands with fresh dirt and then wiped the dirt off against a bare rock. She never wiped food or blood on her cape or waist skin. Furs of the lynx and woolly rhino were not easy to come by. She moved away from the stench of the hedgehog intestines and stepped onto a rounded boulder. Facing away from the bollops' camp, she positioned both her arms behind her back, leaving her vulnerable abdomen unprotected. She spoke softly. Kami fu mingab el meko, ati dele melu imbo o not teknite, her words meant. Listen to me speak, woolly rhino and cave lion. I submit to you in return for your strength. She then turned to face the bollops' camp and covered her belly with her arms. Kami fu bollop mafim, ati dele melu ra abu kulu teknite. Listen to me speak, bollop men. I will not submit to you, and I will take your strength. Skyra secured both her hand blades in the leather sheath on her wrist. Hedgehog blood still stained the heavy stone blade of her cull, so she wiped it off in the dirt. After sliding the cull handle first into the sling on her back, she picked up her spear. She hefted the shaft a few times and checked the tightness of the stone point. Recently, she had replaced the spear's point with one she'd found in her camp after the bollop men had attacked. Now she hoped to stain the point with bollop blood, perhaps even the blood of the same man who had so carelessly lost it. The morning after the bollop's attack, Skyra also had found 2 smaller stone points, each of them affixed with strips of skin to thin spears no longer than her arm. Despite their tiny size, these spears had killed 2 of Skyra's tribe mates. The attack had taken place in the dark, so Skyra hadn't seen how the bollop men could have thrown the small spears with such deadly force. Today, though, she would not underestimate their ability to kill her. She made her way up the hillside. Near the summit, she paused and turned to look back. Dark, scrubby trees bordered a stream in the distance. She had left Ripple to wait there. Now she wished the creature was with her. Perhaps it couldn't protect her, but its presence gave her courage. Actually, Skyra had no idea what kind of creature Ripple was, although it had been her companion through 2 cold seasons and almost 2 warm seasons. She muttered, Ibol, Melu, Yabo, Ra, Nako, Lotup, Mel, Indu. If I don't return, my friend, find your way home. She turned away from the valley and traversed the hilltop. Soon she caught the stench of bollops, and she ducked behind a boulder to peer at the scene below. Another stream flowed by at the hill's base, this one too small to support more than a few trees. Several breaths later, she spotted bollops standing in the stream's ankle-deep water. Skyra squinted, then a whimper nearly escaped from her chest before she suppressed it. Her birthmate, Vina, was standing in the stream, surrounded by 3 bollop women. Vina had been stripped of her cape and waist skin. She was naked except for her 2 dayan, her leather foot wraps, which were barely visible in the flowing water. The women were splashing water on Vina's body, wiping away blood and grime. One woman was working specifically on the area between Vina's legs, where there seemed to be an abundance of blood. Again, Skyra suppressed a whimper. A fourth Bollop, this one a man, stood beside the stream holding a rope tied around Vina's neck. Skyra whispered, "Feko gaden teknite ra." "Where is your strength, sister?" Vina was just standing there, not fighting, hardly moving at all. After staring for a few more short breaths, Skyra pulled back behind the boulder and rubbed her eyes with her free hand, trying to push aside her fear. She reminded herself that she was actually lucky. Vina was away from her captor's camp, guarded only by 4 of the stinking Bollops, and 3 of them were women. Unlike the women of Skyra's own people, Bollop women rarely hunted, and they never participated in attacks. They were frail. Skyra hadn't killed one before, but she hoped to change that now. She scanned the hillside. Other boulders littered the slope, but they were too scattered to provide enough cover to hide her approach. She would have to descend the hill exposed. She closed her eyes for a moment, coaxing the rhino and lion strengths to enter her arms and legs. Skyra got to her feet. Instead of charging down the hill, she walked, moving deliberately. She carried her spear in one hand and cupped the back of her neck with the other, her fingers almost touching her Cole's blade. When she was halfway down the slope, the man spotted her. He shouted something using words Skyra couldn't understand. She kept walking, hoping the man's voice couldn't be heard from the Bollop's camp. The 3 women had stopped washing Vina and were staring. Skyra could now clearly see her birthmate's face, which was swollen and bloody. Vina didn't even turn her head. She just stared into the distance, as if she were dead. The man shouted again. He tossed the rope to one of the Bollop women and picked up a spear from the ground by his feet. The 3 women stepped out of the stream, pulling on Vina's rope. Vina stumbled on the submerged rocks and fell, but instead of trying to get up, she just lay there, her face barely above the surface. Skyra was almost to the water's edge. The stream was narrow. She could cross it in 3 or 4 running strides, although the rocky bottom might trip her. She stopped and looked directly at the man. He stared back at her. Then his eyes widened. He looked down at Vina and back at Skyra, confused by the 2 Nandup women's similar appearance. He shifted one shoulder and tilted his head slightly. At that moment, Skyra's fear faded away. From watching the man's movements, she knew what he was going to do next. This was a skill she had possessed for as long as she could remember. The ability had nearly gotten her killed as a child because it frightened her tribe mates, even her birth mother and the dominant men, one of which was likely to be her birth father. It frightened everyone but Vina, because Vina had the same ability. This was a good time to confuse the Bollop man even further. Without taking her eyes off him, Skyra tossed her spear into the stream. He frowned as he watched the weapon bob to the surface and start drifting with the current. Skyra could sense it now, almost as clearly as if the man were one of her own species. He was confident, convinced that he was not in danger, and he was about to cross the stream. He would come at Skyra and try to take her. He lowered his spear and took a step into the water, wobbling slightly, a little off balance. Skyra charged. She reached the man in 3 strides without stumbling. Before he could step back onto steady ground, she pulled her Cole from the sling on her back, grabbed the handle with her other hand, and swung the weapon.
And that was Stan C. Smith reading a partially disgusting, but certainly amazing sample chapter from his latest book, Obsolete Theorem. It's book 1 of the Across Horizons series. Hey, click the link in the show notes for Stan's website, where you can learn more about him, sign up for his e-newsletter, and all of his other books in there, as well as social media links. Don't forget to also click the links for our sponsors and podcast friends alike, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out next week when I'm back with an all-new author, a new book, and a brand new sample chapter. Remember to keep being kind to your neighbors and reach out and give somebody a hand. Take care.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.